Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at a great year in the movies, which is every year. And on our very first season, we're talking about the year 1994. I'm Josh Bell, joined by...
My name is Jason Harris. Josh over there has been a film critic for over a decade. I am a comedian and filmmaker and a man about town.
Man about town. That's an important qualification that we have to mention in every episode.
Anyone can be a podcaster at this point in time. Man about town's enough of a credit.
That is true, as proved by our producer, Mr. David Rosen, who's here as well. And on this episode,
I just want to say Dave also has a movie podcast. That's why we thought he would be a great producer, called Piecing It Together. And we'll see if he holds up.
Which both of you guys have been on. So this is going to be fun.
Yes, we have. So we sort of know what we're doing. And in this episode, we are discussing the number one movie at the box office in 1994, which is Disney's The Lion King.
So yes, so what we're going to do is we're breaking each season down, each year down by 12 different categories. So we're doing biggest box office, we're doing, best picture winner, we're doing ones that are already formed for us, and then we're going to each have our own picks throughout the season and cult classics that we agree on. And Josh, I think we should let him know you and I have been friends for over 2 decades.
We have. When was we had our friend-versary, wasn't it? Didn't we have that recently or last year or something?
I think it'll be...
We were going to go to In-N-Out?
We should do that. It'll be 25 years in 2021.
Okay.
I used to copy Josh's math homework in high school. We've been friends ever since, and we write together sometimes. We do some projects together, and we talk on the phone a lot still.
That is true, and we make a podcast together.
And we love movies. So why is 1994 an awesome movie year? Let's dig into the biggest box office hit of that year in America, but not North America. Did you know that?
It is in North America as well as in the world, I believe.
I thought Forrest Gump beat it in North America.
No. I mean, at least not according to what I looked up. Maybe we should have. I thought I researched this properly. That it was both the number one movie at the box office in North America and in the world.
Don't look at me, Jason. I don't have facts.
Yeah.
All right, we'll leave it up to Josh.
We'll verify the facts later. So I'm pretty sure it was the number one movie at the box office. It made $422 million in North America, $968 million worldwide. It was the highest grossing film of 1994, both in North America and worldwide, and holds a bunch of records still. I think it's the 35th highest grossing movie of all time, as well as the 7th highest grossing animated film of all time. So it was very, very popular and was the number one movie at the box office in 1994. Award-wise, it was nominated for 4 Oscars, sorry. It won the Oscar for Best Score, for Best Original Score for Hans Zimmer, as well as the Oscar for Best Original Song for Can You Feel the Love Tonight by Elton John and Tim Rice. And it was 3 of the 5 nominees for that category at the Oscars. The Circle of Life and Hakuna Matata were also nominated for Best Original Song. Won the Golden Globe for Best Picture, Musical, or Comedy, as well as Best Original Score. And because the Best Animated Feature Oscar was not around at the time, notable that it also won the Annie Award, which still exists as an animation industry award for Best Animated Feature. So very highly acclaimed even at the time.
And when The Lion King first hit, it was at all told the second highest grossing film of all time when it was all said and done back then.
Right, back then, which of course it slid down, but that's inflation really is the factor for all that stuff.
And a couple of other, just to show you how all encompassing this film was, it on its first day of VHS release, it sold 4.5 million copies, 4.5 million units.
Yeah. Sold
30 million VHS tapes, the biggest of all time.
Did you have one?
I did not. I did not have a Lion King VHS. Did you?
I not personally, but my family did. And the first time I saw this movie was on VHS.
I agree. Mine was too. So you saw it with your family.
I actually didn't. I never saw The Lion King. I didn't see The Lion King probably until like 2005 or something like that when I was an adult. But I watched the VHS that my family had.
And I feel similarly. I feel like I was on a trip to Hawaii with my brother. we were visiting my cousins and we watched a ton of movies. This was like 1996. And that was the first time I watched The Lion King. But I just have memories of bits and pieces like permeating our, teenage years and everything
Right.
that. So,
I think that's true. It was one of those movies that, I mean, as we're saying, it was so popular and so ubiquitous that you couldn't avoid it. But I feel like for me, in 1994, I was 14 or 15, and I was definitely in the phase of like, that stuff's for kids, and I would not have wanted to see it. And that was why I didn't end up seeing it until I was an adult.
yeah, I think I just didn't. I wasn't against animated movies. I just didn't. This one just didn't have any real. I didn't relate to a little lion who had to be king of the of the pride, and that one just didn't.
No, it just didn't resonate for you.
Yeah, so.
Fair enough. So a few contemporary reviews. It was very well reviewed at the time, highly acclaimed. Although it's interesting to read some of these because I think now this movie is regarded as one of the best Disney movies of all time, if not in some cases from some people, one of the best movies of all time. And some of the positive reviews from the time that I was looking at were a little measured. So Roger Ebert said, although the movie may be frightening and depressing to the very young, I think it's positive that The Lion King deals with real issues. By processing life's realities and stories, children can prepare themselves for more difficult lessons later on. The saga of Simba, which in its deeply buried origins owes something to Greek tragedy and certainly to Hamlet, which is very true, is a learning experience as well as an entertainment. So he was concerned that it was maybe not appropriate for children.
I think a lot of people were because, there was a brother killing a brother, and Simba had to eventually get his revenge kill on Scar, his uncle. So
yes.
I think so. I also read that Jeffrey Katzenberg, because this story had been developing since 1988.
Yeah.
He threw a lot of I don't know how much of his life was in there. I don't think he ever had to kill his uncle or anything, but
I would hope not.
But just stuff like the dealing with death and stuff he had to deal with in childhood, he personalized that into the film as well.
Right. Yeah. And it is dark at times. So Janet Maslin in the New York Times says, taking its place in the great arc of neo-Disney classics that began with The Little Mermaid, The Lion King is as visually enchanting as its pedigree suggests, but it also departs from the spontaneity of its predecessors and reveals more calculation. More so than the exuberant movie miracles that came before it, the latest animated juggernaut has the feeling of a clever, predictable product, which I think is a common complaint about Disney movies now, but I was a little surprised to see that complaint about this movie in 1994.
Yeah, especially when you consider that this was the first Disney movie that wasn't based on anything.
Right.
This is the first original story of a Disney movie that they had ever concocted.
Right.
So you would think they'd get a little more leeway with that. So
yeah, I mean, although as we're talking about and as Ebert points out, there's many obvious influences, especially Hamlet, as well as, Greek tragedy and Bible stories and stuff like that. So my last review quote here I have is from Owen Gleiberman in Entertainment Weekly, who said, "The Lion King, more than any of the recent wave of Disney animated features, has the resonance to stand not just as a terrific cartoon, but as an emotionally pungent movie." So he felt a little more emotionally engaged in this movie. And I think that is, for people who really love it, is what they really get swept up in, is that there's a lot of emotion. People, did you cry?
No, I didn't cry. I didn't love this movie. So
yeah. All right. And it did get an A+ cinema score at the time from audiences, which is a rare thing for Cinema Score, the audience polling service, which is based here in Las Vegas.
It was a monster. It had $1 billion in merchandise sales by Christmas of '94.
Yeah,
and that soundtrack is the only soundtrack ever to go.
The soundtrack.
It went 10 million diamonds.
Diamond. Oh yeah, that doesn't even happen.
Yeah,
that's
the first one ever that did that. So.
Yeah. So this was a very, very popular movie. And let's take a little break. And when we come back, we'll talk about our general thoughts on The Lion King. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. On this first episode of our 1994 season, we're talking about the number one movie at the box office, The Lion King. And we're getting into our general thoughts on the movie. So you didn't like it?
Nah, I was kind of bored. I mean, it's literally like almost structured as like half hour, half hour, half hour.
Right.
Right.
It's kind of episodic in a way.
Yeah. So the first half hour is, we meet Simba and Mufasa, and he's going to be the king, and he just can't wait to be king.
Yes.
The music's still very catchy.
It's very catchy.
Yeah.
Although I was struck again watching this movie. There's not that much of it. The music. There's like 5 songs in the whole movie.
I mean, I guess so that opening sequence,
The Circle of Life.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the opening song, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
right. So, and you're kind of over the plains of Africa, and you see all these like animals running in these bright colors, and it's like that's sweeping, and that catches you, almost takes your breath away right away. So I don't think it's the amount of music, it's the way that the music was placed and where it was placed. Like Hakuna Matata happens, after Simba has to run away, when Scar, his uncle, convinces him that Simba was at fault for his father's death and everything. And so you kind of are at this low, and then you're right into the bop, 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 bright colors again.
Right.
And, so it's kind of interesting in that regard. But yeah, the first third is young Simba learning about life, and he's going to be king. The second third is Scar has, kind of taken over, and Simba is like living life. They literally in Hakuna Matata do a transition from kid Simba to adult Simba.
Right. Which I thought was a nice way to do things.
Yeah.
Although, structurally, I feel like this movie is kind of awkward. It struck me again that like young Simba is like half the movie, even though I think the like credit wise, it's always, Simba played by Matthew Broderick. Oh, and young Simba, but young Simba, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. Yes. Yeah. But young Simba is like half the movie.
Right. Well, Matthew Broderick was a much bigger star.
Right. I mean, but even they do it with Nala too, whose, voice actors are not particularly like superstars or anything like that. So I don't know, but I agree with you that it's like the structure is a little awkward.
And that last third is Simba has to come back and take back the pride, Scar, and has made a deal with the hyenas, and the whole Pride Land has gone to hell. So
yeah. And that I thought was a little rushed because they take so much time. Again, it's like half the movie with young Simba. He finally grows up. And, then there's still more time waiting for Nala to come find him and convince him to go back. And when we finally get his return, the confrontation with Scar is really rushed. And I don't know if maybe part of that is a concern about, well, they're not going to show lots of violence in this animated kids movie. But I felt dissatisfied dramatically with that confrontation that's been building, obviously, for the whole movie. I mean, right away, Scar is evil. He hates Simba. He wants to take over. And so you want to see him defeated from the very beginning. And yet his defeat feels very anticlimactic.
I guess I think it would have been awesome if Scar had won and the whole Pride Land
that is certainly not
had gone into some Mad Max future or whatnot.
Yes, that would have been interesting. And I feel like I have a tendency to sympathize with the villains in these Disney movies, although Scar is harder to sympathize with. But yeah, I mean, I will say he's a much better character than Simba. Simba is a boring character.
Yeah, and he just like kind of is like, oh, I guess everything is his fault, and he never does. He's like, yeah, I guess it is my fault, and blah blah blah. So
yeah, and he's always he's very reactive when he does that. He's like, okay, it's my fault, and then even when he comes back, it's Nala and his mother saying, you have to take over. He's like, okay, I guess I'll take over and beat Scar.
Yeah, you're right. He's not a proactive, main character protagonist right there. So he doesn't make active decisions and everything like that. But what about, watching it now, because Timon and Pumbaa were like such huge characters.
Yeah.
Like, what did you think of them now?
I liked Timon and Pumbaa. And what I liked about them especially is how, and I was going to ask you about this because, your grandfather has the connection to the Borscht Belt comedy.
Yeah, my grandfather was a comedian for 60 years and made his bones in the Catskills.
Yeah. Van Harris. And so I thought of Van Harris as I was watching Timon and Pumbaa because Nathan Lane especially is obviously doing some straight up Borscht Belt stuff in this movie. And the terrible puns, I loved it. That was my favorite part watching this again.
I see, and I didn't. I thought he was just eating scenery and, and I like Nathan Lane actually as a Broadway actor. And the two of those guys, him and Ernie Sabella, who played Pumbaa, they have that history together on Broadway and everything.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know, I think it would have been like one of those less is more type things,
Yeah.
so I could have used a little less of them. I don't know. And just so everyone knows, my daughter's 5 and I watched this with her, and she was up and dancing and singing the
Okay.
whole thing. So it holds up from that level for kids right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff she watches is CGI
Yeah.
now. So this was cool that like a hand-drawn thing, even though they did do some kind of
Yeah,
3D
there's some
modeling in this.
CGI enhancement on this movie. Yeah.
But I wasn't really, I don't know if I like, other than Mufasa, like what character I really liked in this thing. So
I did like Timon and Pumbaa in this movie, and especially because Simba is so boring that once we got to them, I thought, okay, now here's a little bit of life to this film now, something to grab me more and entertain me more. I just been watching also the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, the second season, where they spend a lot of time in the Catskills, and you see the comedy there. And
it's Timon and Pumbaa, one of the acts, like a variety act.
No, but they could be. That was the point. Is I could absolutely see that Nathan Lane and Ernie Sabella duo being in the Catskills in the 1950s. So I enjoyed that, and I especially enjoyed it in contrast because you're seeing them and they're got their interplay, and then you get stuck in the drippy love song between Nala and Simba, the Can You Feel the Love Tonight?
You know what I was thinking while I was watching the movie about every song that was in the movie that Elton John sang. Like I like the Elton John versions better of all those songs,
right?
Which is a credit to the Rocket Band, right?
Great credit to him, not so much to. I mean, the songs they're good, like they are catchy, like you were saying. I mean, some of them I think are borderline like annoyingly catchy. Not in a fun
treacly,
way. Yeah. I mean, was your daughter, was she singing Hakuna Matata for like 5 days after this?
I mean, she was up and dancing to it. I mean, I think, Just Can't Wait to Be King might be the best of the bunch. That one's really catchy and fun. But I definitely, man, the strength of that music, we all saw what it did. It's the most successful Broadway show of all time now.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the music is definitely memorable. I think sometimes you watch these old Disney movies and you realize, okay, there's this one song that everyone knows that was really good, and then there's all these other ones that just don't match up to it. And this one, I think pretty much every one of these songs was like a massive sensation.
I think that's part of it. Like I remember once there was this like quote from Stanley Donen, the legendary director, Singing in the Rain and everything. And he said a movie is like 5 really good scenes with the rest of it built around it, So
that's a Howard Hawks quote, I think. 3 good scenes, 3 great scenes, no bad ones.
So, well, then it's both of them. So okay. I think Donen said 5.
Okay.
I almost remember it on Actors Studio.
All right.
But either way, I feel like the music, is so strong in The Lion King that it kind of masks some of the weaknesses that the film has.
Right. Yeah, I think that is true, and that you remember that music. And that was part of why I think I was a little surprised to realize there's only these 5 really well-known songs in this movie and no other ones.
Well, and one of them's not even like that song Be Prepared is like.
That's true. Yeah, that's maybe the weakest of the bunch. Yeah. And Jeremy Irons is great, obviously, but he's not really a singer.
Yeah. So that one just is like, a good throwaway or whatever.
Right. Yeah. But other than that, the rest of those songs are all huge, huge songs. And I think I was expecting, or maybe thought I remembered more songs like Be Prepared, where it was like, oh, here was this other one that just kind of was there. But really, it's just all these big numbers.
Well, In the Jungle,
they briefly sing that, but that's not an original song.
No, I know, but if you're saying like other songs.
Right. I mean, they sing a little snippet of that, and the bird, what's his name? Zazu sings a couple of snippets of other things. But in terms of full-on musical numbers, there's only those few. But yeah, I mean, I think that is what's held up really well from this movie, and that people still, you go to an Elton John concert and he's going to sing Can You Feel the Love Tonight, just as one of his big hits, really even separate from this film.
Yeah, we didn't even mention Circle of Life yet, which is the big closing.
Right. That's the opener.
That's the opener.
That's the opener.
Can You Feel the Love Tonight is the closing.
As the closing credits when you hear Elton John sing it, which is, like you said, is a better version than the one that's in the main part of the movie, which is a duet,
right?
And has different lyrics.
their little love song,
Yeah.
Lady and the Tramp style situation there.
Right.
So.
Yeah. That's really just not great.
Hey, I was gonna ask you.
Yes.
First of all, what do you think of the animation now?
I think the animation holds up. That's another thing. And again, because the first time and the only previous time I had seen this was on VHS, which is not obviously the ideal way to watch a movie. I was struck more this time watching it on DVD on a larger screen, how gorgeous it looks. And that whatever they did, the computer animation stuff, a lot of times you watch old computer animation, especially integrated with hand-drawn animation, it looks really awkward. But I thought it all fit together seamlessly. The character design is impressive, that it looks good. I'm sure if I had seen this in a theater, I would have been even more impressed with the animation. So I liked that. And like you were talking about that opening, that it feels very grandiose, that draws you in. And I think that was even maybe part of the reason that I felt like the conclusion was anticlimactic, because it didn't live up to the big, like, epic sweep of some of the earlier sequences.
I agree with that. And one thing I was thinking with the animation, because I was so taken at the beginning and then it just kind of petered off for me.
Yeah.
Is that because I think this movie was so ubiquitous, because it was so permeated throughout our lives in pop culture. And we've seen these huge Broadway productions and, sequels here and, the TV, like, it almost lessened the impact of the anime. Like when I was watching it this time, I'm like, yeah, it's all right. But I think it's just that it's oversaturated, that kind of style and everything based on the original and whatnot.
Right. That's true. And I think you maybe don't realize how impressive it actually was at the time. And I think it was one of the first animated movies to incorporate computer animation. One of the other things in the Ebert review that I didn't note down, but that I noticed while I was looking at it, was he kind of scoffs at the idea of computer animation, and it says something like, as if a computer could make a movie, which of course was a very not prescient thing for Roger Ebert to say in 1994. But I think there was some skepticism about whether computer animation could really work.
Well, as a screenwriter, that worries me, because that's where we're at now, is if a computer could write a script, because they're also wooden right now, AI scripts. And
right. And of course, I mean, computer animation is not a computer making a movie. It's human filmmakers using the computer as a tool to make a movie.
That is true.
Yeah.
So, what about, I looked at the credits and there's like 30 people on the story here, which is kind of Pixar-y, ahead of the Pixar time. I thought that was interesting. But I don't really know much about the directors. Do you?
I don't either. And maybe I should have looked them up more. I don't think they're necessarily known as the biggest Disney directors. I think they might have worked on Oliver and Company.
No, the guy who originally directed Oliver, and maybe they worked on it, but the guy who originally directed Oliver and Company, whose name I do not know. Nothing? You don't have internet?
Nope.
Wait, it's
we could have looked these things up beforehand.
Fast. Now I know why we pay you the big bucks, Dave. He was originally attached to direct this, and then I think he didn't want it as a musical or something.
George Scribner.
Director of Oliver and Company.
That's why you get the money, big man.
There you go.
Thank you, Dave.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the only other thing I found like really interesting in researching this movie was the controversies that came out of it. Did you read about that?
And I was gonna. I mean, I'm not sure what you were gonna talk about, but I was gonna mention the sex thing. And because one thing that I remember as a teenager, I had not watched the movie like from beginning to end and did not care to. But I remember going through trying to find the moment where sex appears on the screen and trying to pause it on the videotape to see that. Because, of course, at 15 or whatever, I did not care about, animated lions. I did, however, care about the word sex appearing on screen.
Did you find it?
I think so. And watching it again this time, I was trying to look out for it and I didn't pause it, but I remembered the moment that Simba kind of flops down and there's some dust that goes up in the air and it supposedly forms that word. But yeah, it's such a silly thing, but it was a big thing at the time.
Right. And one of the animators says it's SFX
for special effects. Right. Yeah. So. Which I believe because they throw in Easter eggs like that.
I do like that. Wasn't there a Disney movie where there was like a penis drawn into?
Well, there's, I remember, I think this was probably around the same time as in my juvenile imagination that it wasn't in the movie, but on the VHS cover of The Little Mermaid. There's like the king's castle in the background, and one of the spires looks very much like a penis, and I think that was what it was.
I mean, a lot of castle spires look penile.
Exactly.
Though, so,
That's very true. That's very true. So, but yeah, I definitely thought, and as I was watching the movie this time, I was anticipating that sex moment because that was what I remembered from being a teenager and wanting to see.
I thought that's a fun controversy. There are some really weird ones that came out of this. I don't know if you read about them. Some people thought that the hyenas being bad guys and encroaching on the pride's land was an anti-immigrant story.
Yeah, I can see that.
And Scar became a fascist dictator.
Right. I mean, that's not like he gets defeated. So if Scar is a fascist dictator, I feel like that's a totally legit allegory for this movie to have.
I think we're looking far too into it when we get to that point.
Yeah. But on the other hand, in terms of the hyenas, I did when I watched this the last week or whatever it was, I did write on Letterboxd that this movie was blatant anti-hyena propaganda. And, Disney has a history of these kind of secondary animal characters being slightly racist.
I guess because the hyenas are voiced by Whoopi Goldberg, black woman.
Right.
Cheech from Cheech and Chong.
Yes.
Latino man.
Yeah.
And who's the third?
Oh, the third one is Jim Cummings, who is a veteran voice actor. He's in some trouble right now, yes, but he is a white dude.
Yeah.
And voiced a million different characters in various Disney productions.
Right, but it was originally supposed, I think Nathan Lane and Ernie Sabella read for that. And then the chemistry was so good that they just moved him over to Timon and Pumbaa and everything. So.
Right. Yeah. I think, I can sort of see how you could read that into this. I think it's less obvious than something like Dumbo, like the crows in Dumbo.
Sure, definitely.
Where that's clearly based on racial stereotypes.
Yeah.
But I could see this story being that kind of allegory. I can definitely see that allegory there with Scar. I mean, he is a fascist dictator. He mounts a coup, he kills the leader, he takes over, he tells everyone what to do. I mean, that's pretty much the definition of it.
But Josh, you would have been my favorite controversy that I read about, and now that I know how you reviewed it, was there were hyena biologists. Did you read about this?
I did not.
A hyena biologist, or maybe a group of them, sued the makers of the Lion King for defamation of character for hyenas.
That is nuts.
That is a little crazy, and I'm wondering if these biologists had direct input from the hyenas.
Right. I don't see how you can do that on behalf of animals, but it really does malign hyenas, who I'm sure are no worse than lions in real life.
They probably just laughed about it.
Oh,
being hyenas and all.
Man,
everybody.
you've been holding that in your pocket since we started.
Oh, that's a callback to Van Harris from the
Catskills. Yes.
When a joke bombs, you say, "That's funny." My hyena like that.
Is that something he?
A little nice little street callback and everything. So.
That's good. So should we talk about the cast a little more, the voice cast? What did we think? Like I said, Jeremy Irons is a great villain.
Yeah, Jeremy Irons, James Earl Jones is Mufasa. And, we mentioned Nathan Lane and Sabella. We mentioned both Broderick and JTT. So the women kind of get lost in this thing.
They do. That's true. That's not surprising for a Disney movie. Although this did follow on The Little Mermaid, which had a female main character.
One other character we should talk about is Rafiki, the shaman, some type of monkeyish character.
Yeah, he might be a slightly questionable ethnic, racial character there as well.
That was Robert Guillaume, right?
Yeah.
But his character, he's supposed to be a future predictor of some type, or whatnot. And he just kind of he's there at the beginning, he holds Simba up, and then you don't see him for an hour, and then he finds dust.
Yes.
And he's Simba's alive. I guess I'll go speak to him now. All these years he would have never attempted to,
he found the dust. Yeah.
Clues, and then he has that huge scene where he helps convince Simba to come back.
Right. That's true. He's sort of he's a bit of the the magical Negro stereotype, you could say. If you're looking for that. I don't think this movie really is doing that to any degree that's offensive, but I definitely think you could see that in the history of Disney
and let
movies.
me just clarify now. Josh is not saying magical Negro as Josh. Josh is saying But that has been a trope as
Oh
movie.
yeah. That's a common complaint about
Right.
African American characters who, exist only to help the white hero on his journey.
Legend of Bagger Vance.
Yes,
right?
yes. Sometimes they're literally magical, and sometimes they're just like a person who's there to say the right things to get the hero back on their path. And I mean, obviously, there's no, this whole thing takes place in Africa, and there's no race to these animal characters. But Simba is voiced by two white guys.
Yes, but in the new one, he'll be voiced the Jon Favreau remake of live action CGI.
It's not live action. Yeah, it's CGI.
Well, whatever.
So, they call it live action, but there's no actual live action.
Yeah, it's Donald Glover, and James Earl Jones will be reprising his role as Mufasa. And, and Timon and Pumbaa are Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen. So whatever. So that's what I got. I think this bodes well. This is a movie that can be remade with the new technology and could be a cool movie.
Yeah. All right. On that note, let's take a little break and we'll come back and talk about the legacy of The Lion King. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this first episode of our 1994 season, we're talking about the biggest box office hit of the year, Disney's The Lion King. And we're getting into the legacy of this movie. And to get back to what you said about the possibility of it being remade, I completely disagree with you about the upcoming remake. I think it's a horrible idea. And I think that remaking this movie in a super hyper-realistic style is just going to rob it of its charm and its power. But we haven't seen that movie, so maybe we should reserve judgment. But it is a big part of the legacy, obviously. I mean, there's a massive anticipation for that movie, which comes out July 19th.
I mean, The Lion King has been, as far as legacy, it's been with us since 1994, nonstop, since the movie came out.
Yes.
There has been no break. I mean, the Broadway play is still, the show is still playing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's insane. That's the highest grossing play or musical ever on Broadway.
Yeah.
Well, one best musical. It's just, that was Julie Taymor, and
right.
Just insanity right there. So, or it's the third longest running show on Broadway.
I mean, either way, it is obviously massively successful. And I mean, I feel like in certain ways, maybe even eclipsed, as hugely successful as the movie was, the stage show has almost eclipsed its success because it's been going for so long. I think for a lot of people who maybe weren't born in 1994, their first exposure to The Lion King as kids might have been that stage production, which I think is maybe even better than the movie.
I would think so because, when we're talking about these like sweeping scenes and these colors and music, like theater is so visceral and immediate that, it can just have such a bigger impact in something like this, you know, some of the other movies we're talking about, like Clerks or something like that this season, it wouldn't have been as effective, on stage or what.
Clerks, the Broadway musical.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he probably did, wasn't he, for Clerks 3, talking about doing it as a stage play?
Clerks did have a lot of great songs, so
that's true.
There you go. So
we can get into that in our Clerks episode.
Yeah, but I mean, what as far as influence, like, there were a lot of, I don't necessarily want to say imitators, but a lot of movies were definitely took pieces of it, but I don't think, really kind of were able to, matriculate the ball down the field and move it ahead based on what we've seen with this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the legacy is, in part, it's just like you were saying, The Lion King itself being inescapable. We had this Broadway production. There's like straight to video sequels, which I haven't seen any of those. I don't know if you've watched any with your daughter.
No, I have not.
Yeah. But I mean, those were at the time when Disney was really focused on those straight to video sequels and spinoffs. Yeah. They were big business. The Lion King 1.5 and stuff like that. And then of course this upcoming remake,
Timon and Pumbaa cartoon from,
there's
that was a TV show for years. And just it was a massive monster factory of income and ancillary revenue streams.
Right. Which, of course, I think especially those spin-offs and the further story, also can dilute the power of the initial movie. But yeah, I mean, and then also its influence on other non-Lion King productions. I mean, this was a massive hit for Disney. It was a big part of that Disney animation renaissance. And I think
Right.
movies that came after, even now when Disney, everything that they do is a giant juggernaut, I think they still look back to this movie as an example of how to do things right.
I think it might have had more of an effect on the Pixar films.
Yeah.
You know, based on how they develop in, you know, large groups and really kind of build stories out. And, you know, it's never one person building a story. It's a whole think tank building a story. And then I also think, you know, if you look at those Pixar films, the way that music is placed, you know, it's really in that old Broadway style of like, how can we make this the most emotionally resonant, you know, which The Lion King, I give it credit for that, did do well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I was saying, I think for the people who love this movie, it has a lot of emotional power, and people our age or maybe a little younger who saw it as kids really remember how much it touched them, you know, at that age, and they carry that nostalgia forward.
Yeah. Meh.
Yeah. Well, maybe Scarlett will grow up loving The Lion King, and she'll have a stronger attachment to it.
Yeah, it was fun. Scarlett's my daughter. It was fun to watch her dance and enjoy the film, and I'm glad I got to watch it with her. We were talking about if we were gonna rank this, give it a star rating of sorts. We're gonna rate it on the most popular toy of the year, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. You know,
very important.
Figures.
Yes,
I'll give it 2.5 Mighty Morphin Power Rangers,
and that's 2.5 out of 5.
Yeah, right down the middle.
Okay, so. I would give it 3 out of 5 Power Rangers. I think I liked it a little more than you did, but it definitely is something where I don't feel like I'm on the bandwagon with the people who just really love this movie. And again, there are some people who will say that this is one of the greatest movies of all time. It was in 2016 added to the National Film Registry by the United States Congress, which is this kind of official record of important films in the US. And the one other thing I wanted to say about its legacy is that I think it really contributed to the idea that Disney animated movies are like prestige, award-worthy productions. They're not just these things for kids. That even though Beauty and the Beast, which came before this, was the one Disney movie nominated for Best Picture, I think this is a movie that really established the idea that these Disney animated movies are Oscar contenders and, you know, among the best movies of a given year.
Yeah, this, you know, retroactively, there would probably be nothing that would ever come close to touching this if there was a best animated feature of that year. You know?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, and at that time, there weren't as many animated feature films being produced in a given year. But yeah, this is just, it's a juggernaut.
But this is what's fun about Awesome Movie Year. This is our first episode. And when you hear The Lion King, you think of this classic and everybody loves it. And now we get to go back and watch it and
tear it apart.
We don't love it.
So that is The Lion King, the top grossing film in North America and worldwide of 1994. And what do we have coming up for our next episode, Jason?
So next we are going to do a first feature episode, which is exciting. We're taking a director that we both love or respect, and we're going to break down their first feature. And there were a lot in 1994, but the one we chose to do is Kevin Smith's Clerks.
So tune in for that, including Clerks the musical. Thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Thanks to our producer, David Rosen.
And you can find us on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Awesome Movie Year.
And find Jason on the socials.
At Jason Harris Comedy or Jay Harris Comedy on any of them.
You can find me on Twitter at Signal Bleed and on Facebook at Josh Bell Hates Everything.
Cool. And Dave has the Piecing It Together podcast. And
you can find us on Twitter at PiecingPod and our website, piecingpod.com, and PiecingPod on a whole bunch of other sites too.
Tune in next time for Clerks. This has been Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
And all points west.